Once in the blue moon, you'll come across a Deathclaw while you're playing Fallout 4 that's attacking another NPC or another monster, but really it's very rare. And so I thought, why not pit a few of them up against some veteran raiders? Not just the low-end raiders, but maybe middle to high-tier raiders. They've got armor, they've got ranged weapons, and they have Molotov Cocktails they throw, so surely they stand a chance. Now this is 25 to 5, so it's a 5-to-1 advantage, and it didn't really go so well for them. As you'll see here, the flames don't really seem to have much of an impact. If anything, they do more harm than good, because there's a lot of friendly fire, and really these Deathclaws are unfazed by the 25 raiders. Their pipe guns just don't penetrate the armor that the Deathclaws have, and they just launch these raiders up into the air and out of the arena. So it's not even close. It's kind of fun to watch. You'll see some of the new NVIDIA weapons effects from the combat. There's a lot of gravel thrown around that before the recent patch just wasn't there. At any rate, the raiders are quite literally getting eviscerated, and you have to feel a little bad for them because, as I said, it's not even close. These Deathclaws are Savage Deathclaws, and so they're tougher than your typical Deathclaw, but by no means the toughest variety, which is, I think, an ancient Deathclaw. Regardless, though, you can see these Deathclaws just brushed these raiders aside like they were nothing. So I doubled the number, and we're now at a 10-to-1 ratio. 50 veteran raiders equipped with armor, ranged weapons, and Molotovs against a force a tenth of their size. But quickly the Deathclaws charge in. They stun the raiders in large groups with their yells, and they start lifting and swiping and eviscerating these raiders as well. And this fight takes a little longer. It's a much better fight than the original one, at least from the raiders' perspective. But even so, even after their numbers have been doubled, it's pretty ugly. There's a lot of dismemberment going on, and Deathclaws, I don't think, lose a single member of their group of 5. These Deathclaws yell, and the yell seems to have an area of effect stun. The weapons effects I mentioned earlier with the gravel look really cool. These Deathclaws swipe, and it creates a sense of power, just the sheer force behind their swipes and their charges, and that sort of thing. So I checked, it's not shown in the video, but I checked in VATS the health of these Deathclaws, and some of them were pretty banged up, but again, not a single one loses its life here to the 50 raiders. So a slightly better fight from the raiders, but as you've been seeing, they're still getting lifted up and torn to shreds. They're still being hurled off the elevated platform, and when all is said and done, it's a complete and utter victory for the Deathclaws. So really, the value here is just the sheer violence and the dismemberment and the mayhem that these animals cause. Very tough cookies, these Deathclaws. But, you know, this is not the end of the story. In just a moment, we're going to give the raiders a bit more of a chance. Clearly, 50 raiders is not enough, so just like last time, I doubled their number all over again. So now we have 100 veteran raiders. And that's now a 20-to-1 numerical advantage. Is it enough? Well, we're about to find out. Right off the bat, you'll see that the in-game AI isn't really able to cope with 105 AI NPCs all at once. A lot of the raiders are just standing still, at least at first. It's kind of cool to see the area of effect stun from the Deathclaws, and you see like large groups of raiders being pushed back from this area of effect stun attack. But eventually these raiders start waking up and start shooting, and in just a minute you'll see the damage that they're doing to these Deathclaws. It's taking its toll. You see signs of injury on the Deathclaws already, and in just a minute you'll see some lost limbs actually. I think at one point you'll see a Deathclaw with a lost tail. And so the numbers are starting to speak. The 20-to-1 advantage is becoming too much for these Deathclaws. They are getting rid of a lot of the raiders. You're seeing, once again, friendly fire from the Molotovs. But, there's just a sheer, overwhelming force of raiders here. And these are not beginner raiders, they're veteran raiders. And so if you face them out in the wild at a low level, as you've probably experienced already, they don't fall down that quickly. So 100 of them is just simply too much for these Deathclaws. Here's one fighting without its tail. It's looking pretty grim for these Deathclaws. I think several have fallen already, and we're down to our last couple of Deathclaws. One's actually crawling along the ground there. It's kind of pathetic. But here we go. This is the Deathclaws' final stand, and they fought well. They've knocked down a lot of raiders, torn a lot to shreds, but 100 is simply too much for 5 of them, no matter how tough they are. Here's one limping. If they weren't Deathclaws, I might actually feel a little sorry for them. But there you have it. It's kind of cool to see the overwhelming weight of all of these AI-controlled raiders finally take down these Deathclaws. One just fell in a ball of fire, and here they are pouring it on at the end.